We must learn to see, to recognize the living God, even when the world around us is full of loss or grief. For the past few weeks, in sermons, liturgies, and forums, we have been digging into this theme as we've addressed topics of grief, death, and hope. This sermon is about recognizing the living God, even when the world around us looks like loss. And the story of Job is going to help us to do this, to learn to see. In the excerpt we heard from Job, the one Steve read for us, he cries out from the pit of despair, saying, "I know that my Redeemer lives." Job has lost everything at this point. He's lost his children, his livelihood, his health. His friends come to offer comfort and instead become his accusers. They assume his suffering means he did something wrong, that he is a sinner. By the time we get to chapter 19, Job is alone. He's rejected. He's sick. He's exhausted and feeling alienated from God. You can hear his pain as he asks his friends, "How long will you torment me and break me in pieces with words?" Everyone has turned against him, and he feels like even God has gone silent. And then something miraculous happens. In the midst of his lament, Job pivots. From the depths of his being, a voice rises strong and clear, not from his ailing body, but rather from his very soul. Thank you, Bridget. That was a teaser for the Messiah, happening in only a month, so buy your tickets today. Those words, Job's words, in Handel's Messiah, they're used to proclaim Christ's resurrection. But in their original context, they're Job, seeing with the eyes of his heart enlightened, like we talked about last week. Through his suffering, Job shifts from experiencing the world in his body first to experiencing it with his soul first. So one more time, let's listen to Job's words. Thank you. What Job is doing here is what Dwight and I like to call the Great Inversion. The Great Inversion goes all the way back to the second chapter of Genesis when God created humans from the dust of the ground and breathed life into them. We are made of dust and breath, body and spirit, matter and mystery. In this life, the dust leads. We are body-first creatures driven by hunger, work, fear, pain, and ambition. While our breath keeps us going, our bodies define the limits. But sometimes the order shifts. It shifts and our souls take the lead like it did for Job. This often happens in sickness, grief, or times of tremendous suffering. That's where Job is in this scene. He is stripped of everything material in his life, literally sitting in a heap of ashes. His friends have turned on him, his body is failing, and yet from a pile of ashes he cries out, "I know that my Redeemer lives." That is the voice of the soul rising first. Out of dust and despair bursts the breath of God, nephesh. demanding that life and justice belong to God. Long before Easter morning, Job sees with his soul first, and from this point forward, he lives as a soul first human, someone whose deepest truth comes from the divine breath within. We also hear these words in the funeral liturgy in our Book of Common Prayer, and maybe they sound familiar to you because of that. Next weekend, I'll be taking my son Oliver to a funeral for one of his high school classmates. Oliver's friend Corey died in his sleep a couple of weeks ago unexpectedly. I imagine most of us vividly remember the first time we experienced the death of a peer in childhood or young adulthood. While so extremely rare, it sometimes happens. I bring this up because when I take Oliver to Corey's memorial service at St. Mark's Cathedral, the first words in the liturgy will be these: "I am resurrection and I am life, says the Lord." And then the presider will continue with Job's words when they say, "As for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at the last he will stand upon the earth. After my awaking, he will raise me up, and in my body I shall see God. I myself shall see, and my eyes behold him who is my friend and not a stranger." In the midst of grief, Job's words offer comfort, and they do that through our liturgy. They help us shift into a place of seeing soul first with the eyes of our hearts enlightened. And another place that we see this shift is in the gospel reading from today, the road to Emmaus. Jesus has died, and this story occurs in that liminal space between his death and resurrection and his ascension. Two disciples are walking home from Jerusalem. We have Cleopas, and we don't know who is with him. They are walking along, two people shell-shocked by grief, hope extinguished. And the resurrected Jesus joins them walking along the road, but the text tells us their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Just like Job, they don't recognize the life standing beside them, because resurrection looks strange to body-first eyes. But when Jesus breaks the bread, their souls wake up before their eyes do, and they finally see. Jesus is recognizable not by his face, but by his essence. In the breaking of the bread, and their hearts burn. His body bears wounds. He eats bread, yet he moves through walls, because he's no longer body first, but soul first. The Great Inversion is the pattern of resurrection. It is the outward and visible sign of the bad thing is never the last thing. We who are made of dust and breath are invited to live with our souls first, just as Jesus does in the resurrection. We practice living soul first every time we come to this space and when we go forward to this table to receive communion. I mean, think about it. You don't come to communion because your stomach is growling. I mean, one tiny wafer and a little sip of wine, it doesn't fill you bodily. That's because it feeds your soul. It nourishes your nephesh, your very being, the essence of who God made you to be. While Job saw this dimly through his suffering, the disciples saw it fully in the risen Christ. And we experience it in the act of receiving communion. The challenge that lies before us is to recognize the living God even when the world around us looks like loss. That is the resurrection. In it, Jesus reverses the order of creation, and the soul now leads, the body follows, just as Jesus does on the road to Emmaus. Jesus is still embodied, but his essence is divine breath, nephesh, restored to primacy. This is not something that we can see with our eyes or our bodies. This recognition comes through soul connection, through presence, through compassion, through the Eucharist. What would it mean for us to live as if our souls spoke first? As you ponder that question, what would it mean for us to live as if our souls spoke first? I have a few things to highlight for your consideration. Resurrection is not just Jesus' story, it is our model for living our lives now. To live soul first is to recognize the divine spark in every person, to let compassion precede judgment, to allow the Spirit to animate our actions, not our fears or our appetites, and to see relationships, justice, and community through resurrection eyes. When we live with our souls first, we become what Job glimpsed. People confident that God's life runs deeper than decay. We begin this inversion when we are baptized, dying to self and rising to new life. And now each Eucharist becomes Emmaus. As our eyes are opened again to Christ among us, our hearts burning within us. In the end, Job's cry becomes our cry. I know that my Redeemer lives. And every time we gather at this table, we taste that truth again. Bread becomes presence. Wine becomes life. And we remember that dust and breath belong together. Body and soul, heaven and earth, God and us. May this meal awaken in you the quiet certainty that resurrection is already happening. The living God is here, now, in the breaking of the bread.